In 1964, a young man with a promising academic career, a Wallace Stegner Fellowship at Stanford, an appointment at New York University, a future in the literary world that was, by every conventional measure, exactly what a serious American writer was supposed to want, made a decision that most of his colleagues found difficult to understand. He went home, not for a visit, not for a sabbatical, home to a small farm in Henry County, Kentucky, 12 miles from the town where he had grown up, on land that his family had been farming, in various forms, for 5 generations. He bought a house. He bought a team of horses. He began farming the land by hand, the way his grandfather had farmed it, because he had arrived at the conviction, quietly, carefully, against the grain of every institution that had educated and celebrated him, that the most serious thing a person could do with their life was to learn, deeply and permanently, and with the full weight of their intelligence and care, how to inhabit a specific place. He was 30 years old. He is still there. He is 90 years old, and he is still on the same farm, still writing at the same desk, still farming the same land that his family has farmed for 5 generations. He has published more than 50 books, poetry, fiction, essays, and he has done it from a farm in Henry County, Kentucky, without a computer, without email, without the apparatus of the contemporary literary world, and with a consistency of place and practice and conviction that has no real parallel in American letters. His name is Wendell Berry, and the philosophy he has been building from that farm for 60 years, about land and community and rootedness and the specific, radical, deeply countercultural act of staying, is what the age of mobility and optimization and the frictionless life has made most urgently necessary and most systematically difficult to hear. There is a restlessness that the modern world has normalized so thoroughly that most people have stopped calling it by its right name. The background hum of not quite here. The persistent sense that the life you are living is a provisional arrangement, that the real life, the fully committed life, the life in which you have put down roots deep enough to matter, is somewhere ahead of you, contingent on the next move, the next phase, the next version of the circumstances finally being right. The apartment you are renting until you can buy. The city you are living in until something pulls you somewhere else. The job you are doing until the better one arrives. The community you are part of provisionally, because you have not yet decided to make it permanent, because permanence feels like foreclosure when mobility feels like option. We have built an entire economy around this restlessness. The gig, the platform, the network, the opportunity that exists anywhere because it exists nowhere in particular. The LinkedIn profile that is always in motion. The career that is managed as a portfolio rather than inhabited as a vocation. The life that is optimized for optionality, that keeps every door open precisely because the keeping open requires closing none of them completely, which means entering none of them fully, which means that the life lived inside this optimization is always, in some fundamental sense, not quite arrived. Berry says this is not freedom. He says it with the specific, careful, well-documented patience of a man who spent 30 years making his arguments and a further 30 years watching them go unheeded while the culture moved in exactly the direction he had predicted. He says it is the opposite of freedom, that the life optimized for mobility is the life that has made itself available to the economy's demands at the cost of the deeper, slower, more nourishing demands of a place, a community, a particular piece of land, and the particular human beings who live on and near it. He says, the willingness to stay is not a failure of ambition. It is the precondition of love. And love, the specific, local, rooted, long-practiced love of a particular place and the particular people in it, is what the mobile, optimized, frictionless life has made it almost impossible to develop. Because love of this kind takes time. It takes the kind of time that cannot be compressed or optimized or achieved while keeping the option of leaving open. It takes the radical, countercultural, economically irrational commitment of deciding that this place, these people, this land, however imperfect, however limited, however far from the idealized version of a life that the culture keeps offering, is where you are. Wendell Berry was born in 1934 in Henry County, Kentucky, the same county where he farms today. His family had been in that county for 5 generations before him, farmers and lawyers and people of the small community who knew one another through the accumulated density of long cohabitation. He was educated at the University of Kentucky, then did graduate work at Stanford on the Wallace Stegner Fellowship, a fellowship that had produced, among others, Ken Kesey and Larry McMurtry, and a generation of significant American writers who went on to significant American literary careers in the significant American literary centers. Berry went to New York, taught at NYU, published his first novel. He was, by every measure, on the path. And then he came home. The decision, as he has described it in essays and interviews, was not dramatic. It was the resolution of a growing conviction that he was a writer whose work was rooted in a specific place, that the specific place was Kentucky, that the Kentucky he was writing about from New York was becoming, in his hands, an abstraction rather than a reality, and that the only way to write truthfully about a place was to be in it, to be subject to it, to be answerable to it in the daily, physical, entirely unglamorous way of a person who farms the same land every year and lives with the consequences of every decision they make about it. He and his wife Tanya bought the farm, Lane's Landing Farm, on the Kentucky River, in 1965. He bought horses rather than a tractor because he had concluded, after reading and thinking about it carefully, that the industrialization of agriculture was destroying the land and the communities that depended on it, and that farming with horses was not nostalgia, but a practical, ecological, economically coherent alternative. He has farmed with horses ever since. He writes his first drafts by hand, on paper. Tanya types them. He has given interviews explaining this practice, not from technological Luddism, but from the conviction that the slowing down, the friction, the physicality of the handwritten draft produces a quality of attention that the frictionless digital alternative does not. His essays, collected in volumes like The Unsettling of America, What Are People For, and The Art of the Commonplace, make the philosophical argument that the farm embodies, that the industrial economy has waged a systematic war on the local, the particular, the rooted, that it has destroyed communities by removing the economic basis for staying in them, that it has degraded the land by replacing the farmer's intimate, generations-long knowledge of a specific place with the industrial operator's abstract management of interchangeable acres, that it has impoverished the human beings inside it by offering them mobility and consumption in exchange for the things that only rootedness can provide, the depth of relationship, the knowledge of place, the sense of belonging to something that extends before and beyond the individual life. He has been saying this since the late 1960s. He has been largely ignored by the culture that could most benefit from hearing it. He has kept saying it from the same farm, in the same county, with the same horses for 60 years. There is an argument in the consistency itself. Berry's central philosophical claim, the one that everything else in his work supports and extends, is that the human being is, by nature, a creature of place. Not of any place. A specific, particular, geographically and historically and communally particular place that the person inhabits deeply enough and long enough to know it and be known by it in return. This is not a romantic claim. He is careful about this. He is not saying that the rural is superior to the urban, that farming is the only authentic life, that the person who lives in a city is somehow living falsely. He is saying something more precise, that the human capacity for the deepest forms of attention, care, and love, the forms that sustain both the person and the place, requires commitment to a particular location in the way that a marriage requires commitment to a particular person. His analogy is deliberate and exact. A marriage that keeps the option of leaving fully open is not a marriage. It is a provisional arrangement. It may be pleasant, it may even be loving in some attenuated sense, but it cannot develop the specific, load-bearing, fully tested quality of love that comes from the decision, made consciously, held through difficulty, renewed in the specific daily practice of choosing to remain, to be with this person, in the full reality of who they are and who you are, without the escape hatch. Place works the same way. The community you belong to provisionally, that you are part of while keeping the option of leaving available, cannot develop the specific depth of mutual knowledge and care and obligation that makes a community what Berry means by the word. The land you farm with the intention of selling when the opportunity arises will be treated differently, less carefully, less knowledgeably, less lovingly, than the land you intend to pass to your children. The neighborhood you live in while waiting for the better neighborhood will receive from you a different quality of attention and investment than the neighborhood you have decided is yours. He calls this the gift of good land, the specific, practical, philosophically serious gift that a place gives to the person who has decided to stay in it long enough to receive it. The knowledge that comes only from long inhabitation. The relationships that come only from being present through the full cycle of births and deaths, and seasons and failures and recoveries that a life in a place produces. The identity that comes not from the mobility of a self that is always arriving, but from the rootedness of a self that has committed to being somewhere and has discovered, in the committing, that the place has given back something that the mobile life, for all its options, cannot provide. Now the bridge. Because Berry is writing specifically about farming and rural life and the particular communities of the American countryside, and most of the people encountering this philosophy are not farmers, do not live in rural communities, and are not in a position to return to a multi-generational family farm in Henry County, Kentucky. He knows this. His essays address it directly. He is not asking everyone to farm. He is asking everyone to consider what the principle of rootedness, the principle of deep, committed, long-term inhabitation of a particular place and community, looks like in the life they are actually living. The apartment in the city you have decided to make a home rather than a way station. The neighborhood you have chosen to know rather than merely inhabit. The community organization, the church, the school, the local institution that you have decided to invest in rather than consume from. The friendships you have decided to tend rather than manage. The relationship you have chosen to stay in through the difficulty rather than optimize your way around it. These are not small decisions in Berry's framework. They are the decisions, the specific, daily, genuinely countercultural decisions that determine whether a life is rooted or mobile. Whether it is building the slow, specific, irreplaceable knowledge of a place and the people in it, or whether it is keeping all doors open and entering none fully. He is not asking you to stop moving. He is asking you to consider what you are exchanging when you move. What the long inhabitation of a place would have given you that the next opportunity cannot. What the decision to stay, not from failure to leave, but from the positive, deliberate, philosophically serious choice to be here, might produce in you and in the place and in the people around you that the decision to keep the option open cannot. Here is what Wendell Berry asks of you. Practically, today, first, choose one thing to stay for. Not everything. Berry is not asking for the permanent, irrevocable foreclosure of all mobility. He is asking for the one specific act of commitment to a place, a community, a relationship, a practice that you have been deferring because the deferral has felt like wisdom and is actually closer to fear. The neighborhood you have been inhabiting provisionally for 3 years and could decide, today, to inhabit permanently. The community you have been consuming without contributing, because contributing would mean committing. The friendship you have been maintaining at the level of occasional contact when it could be something deeper if you decided it was worth the investment. Choose one. Commit to it consciously, in Berry's sense, not as a final foreclosure of other options, but as the deliberate, chosen, philosophically serious decision that this, here, now, is where you are. And notice what changes in the quality of your attention and care when the option of leaving is no longer doing the psychological work of protecting you from the full reality of being here. Second, learn something about where you live that most people who live there do not know. Barry's knowledge of Henry County is extraordinary. Not the general knowledge of a person who has lived somewhere for a long time, but the specific, layered, ecologically and historically and personally detailed knowledge of a person who has paid close, sustained attention to a particular place across decades. He knows the names of the plants and the birds and the insects. He knows the history of the land and the families who farmed it before him. He knows the cycles, the seasons, the floods, the droughts, the recoveries. This knowledge is available to you wherever you live. Not in the same form. You may not know the flood cycles of your watershed or the names of the birds in your neighborhood, but the practice is available. The practice of paying the kind of attention to where you are that produces, over time, the specific knowledge of a person who has decided that their place is worth knowing. Learn one specific thing about where you live this week, the history of your street, the ecology of the nearest park, the story of the building you work in or live in. That transforms it, even slightly, from background into something known. Because known things are cared for differently than unknown things. And the knowledge is the beginning of the love. Third, find the community that requires your showing up. Barry's philosophy of community is not about belonging in the passive sense, being part of a group that accepts you. It is about the active, obligatory, sometimes inconvenient membership in a community that requires something from you. The kind of community that knows when you are absent, that needs you to show up not because showing up is pleasant, but because the community is sustained by showing up and depleted by the absence of the people who belong to it. This community exists near you. The neighborhood association, the congregation, the school, the local organization, the group of people who are doing something specific and local and real, who are not networking, not optimizing, but maintaining the fabric of a particular place and depending on the presence of people who have decided to be part of it. Find it and show up, not when convenient, when it needs you, because the community that requires your showing up is the one that can give you, over time, what Berry means by the word belonging. Not the digital belonging of the platform and the network and the people who know your curated self. The local, imperfect, fully real belonging of people who have seen you in your ordinary life and have decided that your presence matters to them. Fourth, make something by hand. This is the practice that Berry would least expect to translate directly from farming, and that translates most directly. The act of making something physical, in real time, with your hands and your attention, that exists in a specific place and is accountable to the specific properties of the materials you are working with. Not as a hobby, as the regular, intentional practice of a person who has decided to maintain a relationship with the physical world that the knowledge economy keeps abstracting away from. Bake the bread, build the shelf, plant the garden, repair the thing that could be replaced, but that, repaired, carries the specific history of your having cared for it. Not to opt out of the modern economy, to maintain, in the midst of it, the kind of attention and care and physical intelligence that Berry's whole philosophy is rooted in. The knowledge that things are made by people, in specific places, out of specific materials, with specific effort. And that the person who makes things, even small things, even occasionally, lives in a different relationship to the physical world than the person who only consumes it. That is the practice, not the farm, not the horses, not the return to Henry County or to anything that the modern life makes impossible. The daily, available, genuinely countercultural practice of a person who has decided that where they are is worth knowing, that the people around them are worth staying for, and that the mobility the culture keeps offering is not, on its own, the freedom it presents itself as being. I want to close with the image I keep returning to when I think about Wendell Berry. Not the farm, which I have never seen. Not the horses or the handwritten manuscripts or the 50 books produced from a single Kentucky county. The decision. The 30-year-old in 1964 with the Wallace Stegner Fellowship and the NYU appointment, and the promising literary career and the entire apparatus of American cultural ambition available to him, making the decision to go home. Not from failure, not from the absence of options, from the presence of a conviction. The conviction that the life optimized for mobility, for the open door and the better opportunity and the keeping of all options available, was a life that could not develop the specific depth of attention and care and knowledge that a serious person, a serious writer, a serious human being required. He went home. He stayed. He has been there for 60 years, farming the same land, writing from the same desk, building the specific, irreplaceable, multi-generational knowledge of a place that cannot be acquired any other way. And from that farm, in that county, he has produced the most serious, sustained philosophical argument against the culture of mobility that American literature has ever generated. Not because staying is easy. He has never said it is easy. Because staying is the condition under which certain things become possible that the moving life, for all its richness, forecloses. The depth of knowing, the weight of belonging, the specific quality of love that is only available to the person who has decided fully and without reservation that this is where they are. Here is the question Wendell Berry leaves us with today. Not from the farm, not from the essays, from the decision, from the 30-year-old who looked at the promising literary career and the open road of American ambition and chose, instead, the particular and the rooted and the specific gravity of a place he already knew. What would it mean for you to stay, not because you cannot go, but because you have decided this is worth the staying? What place, what community, what relationship, what particular and rooted and locally demanding thing in your life is asking for the kind of commitment that the culture of mobility has made it so easy to indefinitely defer? And what might it give you if you stop deferring it, that the next opportunity, however good, however real, cannot? Leave that in the comments. Because naming what you are staying for is the beginning of the rootedness that Berry has been arguing from the same farm for 60 years is not the opposite of freedom, but its deepest form. I'll see you in the next one.